Good morning, everybody. As Jeff said, I'm Ruthie Hodges. I'm the manager of the Education Experiences Unit. It's been myself and my team doing all managing this grant and answering all your questions. The main reason the PowerPoint isn't available yet, it's not ADA compliant. We have to have everything ADA compliant, so I'll have to go through and do that. But and feel free to put questions in the chat. Jeff and Dylan will be monitoring that, and so and alert me if there's things, or jump in themselves if there's things we need to talk about that are in the PowerPoint. Whoops. This supports our top 10 strategic plan by closing the achievement gap. These funds are designed to close the achievement gap. We're going to talk about just do a quick review of the grant requirements, because that's going to set the stage for the conversation around the allowable use of funds, how to submit your budget, and how to draw down the funds. Just a brief overview. This is what the law said. So if you're an eligible school and you're on this technical assistance, you had a plan that was approved that addresses learning loss. And we'll talk just a little bit more about this second bullet in a minute. And then just a reminder, and we're going to keep coming back to this reminder about the report to the legislature, because it's all tied in with what you have to put in your budget. And so, again, just a reminder, there's a report to the legislature that'll be due in July that talks about the amount spent, the services provided, the students reached, and the impact on student achievement. And so a theme you're going to hear through us in this conversation is that keep an eye on this report. And as you're putting together your budget, we're asking that you put in very clear line descriptions, because this budget will be wrapped up into that report. And so you'll be talking to the legislature essentially through your budget. Just one final thing on the grant requirement. Once all the schools were eligible, once we determined all the eligible schools, then our finance office, we worked with school aid, and our finance office went through and we calculated the total FTE, divided up the total amount of funds, and developed a per pupil allocation and then a district allocation. So tentatively, the allocation is almost $52 per pupil. Now, the allocations and your grant award notifications will be in your district GEMS application. They're not there yet because we have a process we have to follow here at the Department of Ed. So we calculated the allocations. We now have to send it up through the approval process before we enter them into GEMS. So right now, the allocations are sitting in that approval process. So our hope is that early next week, those GANs and the allocations will be uploaded into GEMS. We want to acknowledge here too that GEMS is not ready yet for the budget piece. We were hoping we could have screenshots. So the GEMS application is undergoing a facelift, and so you can actually submit the line items in the GEMS application. Since it's not ready yet, we will be emailing everybody directions on how that will work, along with screenshots as soon as it's available. And that will probably be ready when your allocations are in there. So, so I know it's hard to prepare for a budget when you don't know what the budget application looks like and you don't know what your allocation is. In Holly, I don't know the difference between full GEMS and GEMS Light. So I can't answer that question. It's supposed to be in the application that everybody already submitted. And Brianne, email me with that question there. So just getting back to the budgets, just know they're going to be, you'll have directions on how to submit them within GEMS. The budgets must align with the posted plans. Again, knowing that at the end of all this, you're going to have to send a report to the legislature that says this is what we did and this is how we paid for it, or use these funds to support this. There needs to be a really clear alignment between those things. We put here budgets must align with posted plans. So one of the requirements is that your plan has to be posted clearly on your website with a 90, either labeled 98C or learning loss, or both. And you can update your plan. The law allows you to update your plan. So now you're eligible, you can update your plan. You just need to keep it updated on your website. We're not asking you to submit it back into GEMS again. But what we're going to do when we review the budgets is we're going to go to your website, look at your plan, and we're going to say, oh, the plan's on tutoring. They got a budget allowance for tutoring. Call it good. Okay. So just know that there's got to be that really strong alignment between the plan that's posted on your website and your budget that you're putting together. Once your budget's approved, you'll get notifications through GEMS on that too. And our plan is to review the budget. So once you get your allocation and the budget application is ready in GEMS, you can submit your budget anytime. And our plan is to do reviews, like rolling reviews, weekly reviews. We're not going to have a set deadline by which they need to be due. We're just going to approve them as they come in and send out the notifications through GEMS. I know there's some questions here on GEMS, and unfortunately, I'm just not GEMS savvy enough. I just know that things are going to be in GEMS. We have some contact information at the end of the slide where you can send specific questions about your application. We will try and be sending out updates and clear directions. Yes, I see Jamie's question. Ideally, they're on the transparency link, and that's where most of them are. We did run across some that put it right on their front page. That's fine too. It just needs to be somewhere, somewhere visible. And I think the transparency page makes the most sense. And even on these plans, even if so, you know, some of you recycled plans, which was perfectly fine. That's great. And you already have that plan posted on your website. You need to repost it as a 98C, because we don't have first of all, that's the requirement of the law. And second of all, if a legislature is going to go through and say, oh, I wonder how the districts in my region use these funds, they're going to go and look for a 98C or a learning loss link. They're not going to know to go look at your continuity of learning plan or your literacy plan. So I understand there could be duplication of effort, but that's just, you just have to do it. No, the updated plans do not have to be presented to the Board of Education. That was not in the law. That presentation to the Board of Education was just for the eligibility pieces. So in some way, you think about it, we're in phase 2 now. The first phase of the application was who are the eligible districts so we could calculate the allocations. We've calculated the allocations. As we talked about earlier, it's close to $52 a pupil. And so you can get a rough idea because you just multiply that by your total FTE. And I see Jeff is trying to answer some of the questions in the chat too. Yeah.
Why don't we, let's just take a pause here for a minute and see if we can catch up on these. I think some of these we can answer real quickly before we get into allowable use. Let's see, I got to go up to the top and we'll start with the report, Patty. I just answered that. It is this year that the report is due. It will be a snapshot of where you're at on that date. It is not going to be due at the end of the fiscal cycle, but it is the legislators have a specific date in mind in this school year. So unfortunately, it'll just be a snapshot of what you've accomplished at that point. You can post your posted plan can be updated and amended as often as you see fit, because we're truly trying to have these funds match the needs, and we know those needs may change throughout the year. We post the print. Ruth Ann already answered the question on yes, please post it in your transparency link. That makes it the easiest.
Yes, so all funds have to be spent by September 30th, which is why, but the report is due to the legislature. We're asking you to submit it to us in July so we can get it to the legislature by their deadline. So we understand that you might not have spent all your dollars by the time you submit your report to the legislature. So that's what Jeff is saying. It just will be a snapshot in time, but we're going to have another whole technical assistance around the report on how to submit that report. And then Jeff and Dylan, I see there's a lot of questions on that. Was it calculated on the fall 2022? You guys were there. I was not in the calculation piece.
It would not be calculated on the fall 2020 this October, because that data has not been reviewed and verified yet. So it is based on your FTE ending of last year, which was the last verifiable count. Oh, sorry, Ruthann.
No, go
there's
ahead,
another
Jeff.
question. Will there be indirect? There is no indirect in this grant. It is for learning loss. When you see the budget, you will see that any direct cost for administration, that type of thing, will be allowable, but there is not an automatic indirect in this grant.
So that's a nice segue into the next part that we were going to talk about, was the allowable use of funds. And so because these funds are to be, and the plans are around learning loss, these these funds have to support learning loss. So that's supplementary content and intervention services. And again, we think we're asking that the line item descriptions match what the district plan is. So if your plan is around tutoring, we would expect line items to be about tutoring. If your plan was summer school, we would expect line items around summer school. And so we've organized this slide by the there were 4 categories of plans that you could submit. And so one was administering high quality assessments. So if that's your plan, your budget should talk, it can be for the purchase of the assessments. It can be purchase of staff to support the assessment. It can be PD around the assessments. What assessments are we going to use to identify students that need extra supports, how progress monitoring, all those types of pieces. Lots of flexibility in there. It can be for purchasing the assessments, but we want to make clear that you can't just go out and say, okay, we're going to buy a bank of laptops to administer the assessments. There's other funds for that. That's not specific to learning loss. And if you have questions about that, you can email us specifically. But similarly, evidence-based activities to meet the needs of students and mitigate learning loss. You can hire all kinds of folks. Just make sure it aligns with your plan and links to learning loss. Intervention materials. Now, some of the I want to just talk specifically about this bullet. Some plans that we approved talked about buying curricular materials, but they also talked about then the supplementary part of it. So we want to make sure that even though in your plan you want to buy a whole new set of curricular materials, these funds can only be used to support the supplementary parts of it. You can't buy a tier 1, a whole new tier 1 reading program, but you can buy the components of that program that would support the intervention, the tutoring, that sort of thing. And then support for out of school time activities that are designed for addressing learning loss as well. And that includes summer school types of things. We didn't see a lot of plans that did this, but again, just make sure whatever you put in aligns to what your plan is. So if you're having, your plan is to provide family math nights because that was part of your learning loss plan that was approved, then we would see line items on that. And this was the other bullet. I don't think we saw any plans that addressed this at all. So Jeff, you've been reading and answering the chat. I'll let you jump in here.
A couple of quick ones. That as we're in allowable use of funds, there was a question about staffing. If you've hired math coaches or new hires this year, and they are part of your learning loss plan, yes, that would be an allowable use of funds. We have several of the plans that is specifically what they're looking at is the bringing on of additional staff that's targeting those areas for the learning loss. Again, we will be posting this presentation on our accelerated learning webpage as soon as we have it ADA compliant and the transcript ready. There's a question about, do we have to do the budget, resubmit a budget if it was in our original application? Yes, you're going to have to resubmit since the budget has to be tied to your report. We're trying to get ahead of the game so that those items will automatically load up into your report to the legislators. It should be noted that we will not be preparing the report. As Ruth Ann hinted earlier, please make sure your language is specific when you're looking at the narrative in your budget items, because we will just be collating that report for the legislators. So that's why the budget's a little different, and we'll have Q&A for that annual report for you to answer. To submit this in one big package to them instead of 474 different reports. Then I'm going to let you go, as I'm going to go back and try to catch up on chats.
Yeah, I'm just going to look here. I see the one on the question, Anders on Chromebooks be purchased. Just email Jeff specifically on that with details. I mean, our thinking is that it would have to be the exception where a school did not have Chromebooks available. So that we can answer that question offline. I saw there was a question on the we contract with a company to provide services. Yeah, I mean, you have to, those services have to be provided within that grant period. If you're using 98C funds, you could use other funds to keep those services going. But the 98C funds are for the fiscal year running from October 1st to October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2022. For this grant, opportunity. So, so we did have, Deanna, we did have lots of plans that talked about, that made the case for they would use some funds to hire teachers for smaller class sizes. And we approved the plans that they clearly tied it to, addressing learning loss. So they made the plans that were approved for that really made the case that the smaller class size is going to support learning loss. So if that's your plan, that's what you put in your plan, then that can be in your budget. So that's a really nice case of saying you put in your budget, we're hiring.
Sorry, Ruth Ann, I muted you.
Oh, was I muted?
Just for a brief minute there, I was trying to mute all of our participants who were getting some background noise.
Okay. So where did I stop? Where did you stop hearing me? About the hiring for smaller class
hiring size. Additional staff.
Yep. So that's allowed. It just needs to align with your plan. And goods is because your plan, we approved your plan if it was a link to the learning loss and the smaller class size. We will put in the link to the accelerated learning page in the text. We don't have anything posted there yet, but that's where it's going to be posted. Let's see. Could texts and resources that are supplementing Tier 1 programming, such as decodable text, be an allowable expense? If that was part of your plan, yes. It's buying the Tier 1 curricular materials that would not be an allowable use of these funds. It is allowable, yes, Stephanie, that's a really good question, because that we've learned some things since our presentation in September. Again, because these funds don't expire until September, you can run your summer school program through the whole summer and use these funds to support it. Again, what Jeff was getting at is when you file your report, of course, in July, you're not going to be able to fully address the impact on students. So you would just have to say, as of, July 1st, these are things we've noticed as the impact on students, or we haven't noticed any impact on students yet because the summer schools were doing an evaluation in August or something like that. This impact on students, the legislators are asking for it. It didn't say it had to be gold standard evaluation. And so you can just, and there's no consequences for not having an impact on students, right? You can just say, we can't measure that yet, or we noticed this, or whatever. So Michael Ram, I think I answered your question. They have to be spent by September 30th, and your FER will be due October 30th, just like all the other federal dollars. Yes, transportation to attend summer school is allowable. Jeff or Dylan, can you put the link to that FAQ? Put it in the chat. There's a really nice, they've updated the FAQ. US Ed has, and there's a specific section in there that talks about allowable uses of transportation, and they specifically call out summer school. They specifically call out of school time learning for transportation. We'll have the emails at the end of the contact of the people if you have specific questions. The date that is in there that somebody put in there, that is 10/1/2022 to 9/30/23. I misspoke when I said October 2023 was the start date. And I apologize for that. Yes, and Kristen, I think we clarified that the dates. Jeff will put in the dates for sure. I'm just way behind on the chats. Is hiring an instructional coach allowable? If that was in your plan and you made the case for why it ties to learning loss, then yes, it's allowable. There's no carryover. Jeff will for sure put in the dates. We put in, Jeff also put in the FAQ. That's really useful. Again, everything that applies, you need to be looking at your plan. We will work on a FAQ, and that I'm imagining that will come out when the allocations are available and the budget is available in GEMS. And we have everybody's email addresses, so we can send emails directly to you, because we now have a finite set of eligible schools. I'm gonna move again through the presentation since we're out of time and give you the contact information. We just wanted to mention too, these are federal dollars and they'll be distributed on a reimbursement basis through Nexus. And these are two resources. Jeff put the first one in the chat. We'll put the second one in the chat as well. Dylan or Jeff will. And then Dylan is going to help with all the GEMS questions. He's working closely with the GEMS staff, which I just want to point out that our GEMS staff they're totally understaffed. It's basically a one-man unit, and so Dylan has really stepped up to the plate to provide support. So anything that has to do with GEMS, Dylan will do his best to either answer your question or find an answer to it, or lift it up as an issue when we have our conversation with the GEMS folks. And then Jeff will be the person when you have funding questions, budget questions. And his contact information is there as well. You can start spending now, except you won't be able to, first of all, you don't know your allocation for sure. I'm sure most of you have already gone through and calculated since we've given you some information. So you have a better sense than you did in the fall about how much money you're going to be getting. But yes, you can, once you get your funds and your budget is approved, you can recode expenditures you've already made now and draw them down. As long as they were made within between October 1st and September 30th. Yeah, you're going to draw down a nexus. I saw that was questioned. Yes, and they have to be spent by September 2023. If you are an eligible school, I'm looking at the question here, is there some type of approval we should be receiving from the initial submission? If you were deemed eligible, you got a notice from JAMS, and you also got an email from us with the date for this technical assistance. You don't need to readjust you don't need to resubmit your plan. You just have to make sure it's updated on your website. We're not going to, now you're eligible, we're not going to make you resubmit the plan, but we are going to be looking at how does the plan on the website align with what you're putting in your budget. We're not going to go back and compare and say, oh, in November they said they're doing tutoring and now they're going to do at summer school. We're not doing that. If your budget says summer school, we're going to go look and see that your plan says summer school. And we will be posting, we can probably email it out since we have the list of everybody. But again, it'll give us a couple days because we have to make it ADA compliant. The emails to people, we keep getting this question about you've got some type of approval. You would have gotten something in GEMS and you would have gotten an email from us, but we used the contact information that was in GEMS. So if you're not the contact person in GEMS, then you did not get the notification. So those are the types of questions to address to Dylan. And like I said, your allocation and everything will be in GEMS. And in closing, I just want to say that we are here to support you in doing those budgets. So anytime, if you're having questions, once the budget application is available and you know your allocation, just feel free to email us. And if there are if my plan stated summer school through 6:30, do I have to now revise my plan to include the entire summer? I mean, depends on what your budget is. We just know that they have to align. Maybe just take the date out of the current plan and just say we're doing summer school and this is what we're doing, and we'll look at the budget. It doesn't have to be that complicated. So yeah, right. Yeah. So you can change. basically we're going to be looking at alignment between the budget and the plans, and that's what the legislators are going to be looking through too in your report. So everything ultimately, when your report is submitted, budgets, plans, everything have to be aligned. And for us to approve your budget, we're going to go out and look at the plan that's on your website. And so just make sure that they align, that your plan is updated on your website and aligns with your budget when you submit your budget. And with that, we will conclude this webinar.